Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Ben Data, co-chair of DSW. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. This community has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade, and this week we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors, whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors, who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible. Founder Track, Kickstart, Growth Track, Friday Health Plans, Developer Track, Quizlet, Product Track, Palantir, Designer Track, Battery 621 in the Public Works, People Track, Exactly, and Spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement this week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing Company, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, Gusto, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pine Insurance, Promontory Mortgage Path, Red Bull Basement, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget to use hashtag #DenStartupWeek to share your experience and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Welcome to this session of Denver Startup Week. I'm Serene Pappenfuss, a principal at Kickstart Fund. We're on a mission to build great companies in the Wild West by backing the boldest entrepreneurs with capital, community, and expertise for the journey. A lot of VCs happen to invest in Colorado. At Kickstart, we focus on it. We love our Colorado startups, Sondermind, Nomad, Pomp, and Havenly, just to name a few. Because we were among the first seed funds in the region, we know what it's like to start something before others understand your vision, which means we're willing to lead investments in promising teams. We use our experiences to grow your startup and recruit top talent. Our portfolio is filled with visionary founders like you who are committed to moving the whole ecosystem together. It's the network effect in full effect. Raising venture capital is more than swapping shares for money. It's inviting the right investors to complement your team. We hope we'll be your choice for seed funding in the Mountain West, and we hope you enjoy this session.
Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow, regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, sexual orientation, or the combination of those identities. There's something for everyone at DSW, thanks to all of our community members who submitted their best content to make this week what it is. And thank you for joining us. Thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep DSW free and accessible for all, especially our Founder Track sponsor, Kickstart. With that, please enjoy this session and the entire week ahead.
Okay, give us one moment, everyone. Beautiful, I think we are good to go. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Osa.
And my name is Virginia. We are co-founders of Capital Studio, a blended capital group that supports underrepresented entrepreneurs. We define underrepresented founders as people of color, veterans, women, people who identify as LGBTQ+ or live in rural communities.
A real spotlight has been placed upon the economic inequalities experienced by underrepresented communities, especially the Black community. But the question remains, how can we use this newfound opportunity? Today, we have a group of Black trailblazers that have achieved extraordinary accomplishments. Our goal today isn't just to hear about their amazing stories. It's to find ways to replicate their success so that stories like theirs turn from being the exception to the norm.
So let's talk about the current capital landscape before we begin. When you're raising venture capital has a 2% success rate. 10% of it goes to underrepresented founders, and less than 1% go to Black or women of color led. Specifically, if you are a Black woman, it's less than 0.1%. And despite the pandemic, venture capital investments has actually gone up, but not for the Black community.
Now, with all that being said, we'd love to welcome our amazing panelists. And so for our panelists, please, if you can tell us whether you are an investor, a founder, or both, where you're currently located, and give a 30-second elevator pitch of your organization, starting off with David Potter.
Hey, thanks for that, Osa in Virginia. And how's it going, everyone? My name is David Potter, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Kuru. So that would definitely put me on the founder side. But a quick little bit about myself and the company. So Kuru has a solution where we partner with banks and lenders, and we help them grow by recovering the rejected applicants. So a majority of everyone applying for, say, a personal loan, a mortgage, or credit card, a majority of them end up getting rejected, especially when you look at minority or underserved communities, ends up even being a more severe degree of that. So rather than, you're applying for a mortgage, getting rejected and being left at a dead end where society just looks at you as a deadbeat. On the other side of that, the reality is, you may have not had that advantage, or parents who can co-sign, whatever the case is. So instead of ending with a rejection, our solution gives you a path to approval, letting you know the actions that you need to take in order to get approved for that mortgage, loan, credit card, etc. That being said, we've definitely taken the venture route, have raised some venture capital, and excited to share a little bit more with you guys in the session today. Thanks.
Thank you so much, David. Up next, we have Cam Ward.
Hello, everyone. My name is Cam. I am the founder and CEO of Black Men in Tech, basically in a nutshell. I'm currently in South Florida. Basically in a nutshell, we're a nonprofit that look for education and access for individuals that self-identify as Black men, so that we can tell the voice and tell the story and give them a platform to share their experience in the tech space. While we focus on Black men, there is also a parallel focus to ensure that everyone feels like they have a seat at our table, so they can hear and share their own path and discussion as well. And it's important to ensure that we highlight the stories, good, bad, and ugly of the Black men in the tech space. So that's what we do in a nutshell. We do a bunch of other events like, philanthropic efforts in order just to make sure individuals understand that representation is important, and everybody in the tech space does not necessarily have to be an engineer. So that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cam. Up next, we have Regina Gwynn.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Regina Gwynn. I am the CEO of Trust Noir, which is a beauty tech startup that takes the guesswork out of finding the right products and services for women with textured hair. I also am, while I'm a founder, I'm also an investor and a community builder. So started Trust Noir and created Black Women Talk Tech, which is the largest collective of Black women tech entrepreneurs in the world. We really focus on building billion-dollar businesses through the use of technology and innovation. So we've been around since 2017. We have 3 tech conferences per year and a host of additional programming. So happy to talk about ways to really empower Black and Brown entrepreneurs to build more tech startups. I'm also a VC in residence at Pipeline Angels and a scout with Ada Ventures, which is a VC fund based in the UK. So happy to talk about founder side, investor side, all the sides.
Perfect, perfect. And up next, we have Chandler Malone.
Hey everyone, I'm Chandler Malone. I'm the founder of Boot Up and also serving as a venture partner at Atento Capital. At Boot Up, we're trying to build the tech talent pipeline of the future. And so we're doing so by building out software for boot camps and vocational training schools that basically helps them to increase their enrollment while still maintaining strong candidate placement rates. And then we monetize by offering our candidate data to enterprise tech companies that are looking to fill gaps and diversify their companies. With Atento Capital, we invest both in venture capital funds and directly into companies, anywhere from pre-seed to Series A. And yeah, just super appreciative to be here, to hear all the other panelists and learn from their stories as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. And finally, we have Eric Drummond.
Wow, Osa, Virginia, what an amazing panel you've assembled here. Thank you for inviting me to this dance. So Eric Drummond, I wear a couple of different hats. I'm the chair of our state's Venture Capital Authority. We're early and seed stage institutional venture fund. We're a fund of funds. We have about 100 million plus under management. I'm the CEO and founder of the Innovation Corridor Investments, which is a technology enhancement and acceleration platform. And then I'm also a founding director of our state's Green Bank. So we're a couple of different hats, both on the technology side and on capital access, capital formation, and venture capital.
Man, thank you. Thank you. As we talked about, we have an amazing panel today. And so we want to hop straight into the questions. The first one that we have is, what role did your identity play as a Black founder in the solution that you built? Or if you're an investor, how has your identity impacted the way that you invest? And if we have someone that wants to go first, you can go ahead.
I have a pretty good or hot answer on that. Sounds like no one is taking the mic for me, so I'll go ahead and grab it. So yeah, no, I think identity played a big part into our solution, because with a lot of entrepreneurship, I'm a firm believer in starting with a true problem, which, if you have a true problem, you're passionate about what you're solving for, because it really gets you through a lot of the, the valleys and peaks that you go through as a startup, because things definitely get hard. So what I started with, or, what the initial problem that we faced with my company was, when I was in university, I was studying on a full ride scholarship from Bill Gates, which covered schooling as well as housing. And when applying for off-campus living, maybe my sophomore year, or going into my sophomore year, I ended up getting rejected because I didn't have established credit. So it was an irony or a byproduct of, I guess, having a full ride or not having to pay student loan debt. So because of that, I couldn't get approved for housing. Over that summer, when taking summer courses, just had a couch surf a bit, et cetera. But I began to understand the importance of credit, or at least the pain of not having credit. So I began to ask friends, family, what they understood about credit, to try to get my, gears together with that. And ultimately, there was kind of two things that I learned there. One, a lot of people didn't thoroughly understand credit. And the second thing was that, credit was definitely needed for major life milestones. So after learning about credit, building up my credit, I ended up gaining housing, but the passion didn't stop there. So I ended up earning certifications in credit counseling, ended up helping other students, families, graduates build up or rebuild their credit scores. And through that, another insight that I ended up learning, actually really what ended up happening here was, between schooling and managing this, is that was hugely taxing on my time. So I began to look for ways to automate the solution. That eventually led into an app that was the initial version of Kuru that just provided the suggestions that I would have provided naturally, but just through people linking their bank accounts and the system analyzing that. The end users, consumers, people that were on the platform really liked that, and they liked working with that more than me, which was really offensive, but it was in the direction that we were aiming for. It was much more scalable, so that was great to hear. But just taking a pause there, because there's a couple of pivots, et cetera, throughout our journey, leading to solution as it is today. But to just really capitalize on that is, I believe, starting with a true pain point definitely lets you know that you're solving for a problem that is actually there. So again, regardless of how that solution ends up looking, as long as you're solving that true problem, whether it's an investor saying, I don't believe in it, or too low in traction, whatever the case is, there's a problem. You faced it, you've spoken to tens, hundreds, however many people that have faced that problem. There's something there that needs to be solved. And that passion has driven me every single day, whether things are good or bad. And that's been a huge energy source, because as I was mentioning earlier, but it's not just, in my case where, fortunately, housing would have been covered, but if someone's an immigrant, let's say you come from just Canada and come to the United States, you could have had a perfect credit score then, your credit score is back at nothing when you come to the United States. So you are going to struggle getting housing, let alone if you may have been a lower class or middle class immigrant, say from India, where your parents don't have credit scores, you're starting from ground zero, and it's an unfamiliar system. It doesn't mean that you're not credit worthy. It means that you have an old system. So we mentioned about solving for the underserved. Just a funny thing here was, when initially pitching our solution, so many investors just didn't understand it. They're like, you're helping deadbeats. They already have bad credit. You can't do anything for them. And to me, it didn't make any sense, but it let me know that in at least in the world of investors where, at least not stereotypically, but archetypally, if that's a word, by the archetype is oftentimes a white male, is in their sense, their parents had good credit. They had good finances. They had a bank account. They were able to make good credit, since they were 17 years old or whatever the case was. So someone with bad credit to them is a deadbeat, at least in that limited perspective, where in my perspective, it was my neighbors, my friends, my family, my mom, my cousin, whatever the case was. And it wasn't that they weren't credit worthy. It was that the system was not working for them. So that's how my experience led me to finding a true problem that I was passionate to solve and find a solution for.
I might raise a point or two. I think David raises several really interesting points, and part of it is that his current perspective on meeting a gap in the market, supporting people, comes from his deep background, so rich and a deep background, and that impacts the way I've approached the market. My professional background has been as an attorney. And so for many years, I practiced with a number of law firms, including I was a partner in a law firm that's now the 15th or 16th largest law firm in the world. So that gave me the opportunity to be in the boardroom where I was the only person of color, maybe in the boardroom, maybe in the building, I'm not sure, but certainly in the boardroom. And so that gives you a certain perspective. And the opportunities I've had being the chair of our state's venture capital authority. So I'm 9 years now, or in my 9th year on the board of directors of our state's venture capital authority. I'm about 6 years as the chair. So I've had the opportunity to see, as we deployed, over $100 million in capital, how that has impacted a whole range of entrepreneurs and innovators. And having decided to take some of these experiences from my legal practice, from having been a founder myself, was to decide to launch a DEI-focused fund. So we're devising our 5th fund now. Typically, we go to market with a tranche of capital, maybe anywhere between 15 and 30 or 40 million. We try to be the anchor capital to de-risk a fund or to support experienced general partners, but one's looking to do something novel with capital. The fundraising part is one of the most difficult parts of it, so we just de-risk it. So we're going to come to market probably with 30 or 35 million for our next fund. I anticipate we'll launch that capital in the first quarter of 2022. And then along with that, I'm working with the CEO of a large international venture investment management company. And they're a $1.2 billion organization that has launched multiple funds in emerging and transitional markets across the world. So we're going to launch a BIPOC fund here in the US. It'll be around 100 million capital that we'll start out with. And while it'll be focused on supporting underrepresented entrepreneurs and innovators, the prime force behind it will be supporting female, BIPOC, and underrepresented general partners. So it's like, let's skip to the chase here. Let's not wait for some a minority to be a junior analyst, a mid analyst, a senior analyst, and work themselves up to vice president, and then maybe a partner, and then they get some decision making. Let's go ahead and figure out how to build an ecosystem, a support system, a mentor system to connect networks with people who are interested in doing that, so that when the diverse entrepreneur innovator shows up at the pitch, there's a person of color, there's an underrepresented general partner there that says, I understand this person, I understand the opportunity. I have to have an opportunity for my fund, for my investment committee, but I get it, they may not. This opens up new markets. This opens up new opportunities for the fund. It opens up new opportunities for the entrepreneur, for the innovator. It supports the creation of generational wealth, all of which I've seen for the last decade or more, so little of it going to people who look like me. It's time to make a difference. A lot of people have been in the game. We were looking at developing a fund that we thought could attract much more than the capital, the 100 million that we anticipate bringing to market. So we've identified other large institutional partners. We want to make systemic change. But like David, this is generated by my background, my lived experiences, much as it is, I'm sure, with the other panelists.
Thank you so much, Eric. We actually want to pass it off to Chandler.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think I can first start talking about the investing side. There were 2 instances last year, where our fund was looking at investing in funds, run by Black general partners. And there were times during the diligence process where, we kind of had, when I say we, I mean, the firm, had questions. And sometimes they were around, kind of coded terminology like demeanor, rather than results, rather than, return profile. And that's one of those things where as not a senior person, in an organization, a lot of times it can be easy to not speak up, and not say much just because, you're looking to continue to grow and have the good favor. But I think also when you have not gotten opportunities before, even though you've been more than qualified, it hits home, and so there were 2 particular instances, where that happened, and just being able to be in the room and advocate, even if you're the only person, can make such a big difference. And we ended up investing in both of those funds, and one of those funds has been the best performing investment for the fund to date. And so, I think the trials and tribulations, all of those things, I think when you step into a room, it has to be about the bigger and trying to make life a little bit easier, for the folks going forward than just, moving up in the room. And then, I'll say even with our company, I initially started the company because I saw that there was such an arbitrage between the demand for tech talent and the actual supply in the market. Depending on which consultancies reports you read, there's a 2 to 5 million person talent gap in the US today that's projected to grow to 85 million by 2030. And so, for me, just intuitively, I went initially to the university pipeline, right? Just because that's kind of our biggest, education to professional pipeline, in this country today. And, speaking with an advisor, she was like, do you feel like you're creating the impact that you want to create? I know that you can maybe do this, but do you feel like you're creating the impact you want to create? And it made me actually start looking at other pipelines. And so from a business perspective, it turned out that it was better for us to go the boot camp, and vocational training market route, because that demographic of candidates is growing rapidly, whereas college enrollment's been declining. But thinking about, folks who, maybe had worked in Home Depot, right, their entire career as a cashier, and now Home Depot wants to hire a bunch more software engineers, but it's cheaper for them, to hire, their own retail and frontline workers, and upskill them rather than getting rid of those folks and then beginning a whole new search process. I think a lot of that was just based in okay, I want to do something that is helpful to people because, I think as a kid, you understand your history and all of those things. And so, I think both on the investing side, and, what we're building as a company, right? You take some of those experiences that weren't positive, and you can turn them into a really positive and even, quite frankly, transformative, experience for others. So, yeah.
Awesome. That is beautiful. And up next, we wanted to pass it off to Regina.
So many thoughts, so many good conversations and perspectives that we've heard thus far. And, I think about my journey as both a founder and an investor, how being a founder has influenced the way I think about how we support the investor community. Black Women Talk Tech commissioned a research study last year called the Face of a Founder Report. And it's the largest study to date of over 800 Black women founders that talks about their profile. And when we think about what investors usually look for in a founder team, is first the idea of a team. And yet over 70% of Black women entrepreneurs are running their businesses by themselves. So they are solo entrepreneurs. They are extremely scrappy. They're very resourceful. They're hustling. They're bootstrapping their businesses because they don't have access to not even the friends and family rounds that oftentimes other founders can get access to. So when we think about, what does a good founder look like? What are the tenets of a good startup? We have to challenge the ideas of what that is from the very beginning. And that's something that was also my story. I had a co-founder, but neither one of us were technical co-founders. So the struggle of finding a CTO, my goodness, that's a whole nother panel. But when we think about getting that access to technical talent, when we think about presenting to investors without a CTO, right? Like how is that influencing the ways in which they're looking at whether or not you truly fit their investment thesis? And so, knowing and understanding that story as a founder has definitely just allowed me to advocate a lot more and speak up even more loudly in the room when we're making investment decisions and saying, oh, well, she doesn't have what quote unquote looks good on paper, but she's done all of these things in spite of that. That is the piece that I think is extremely important for us to remember and should provide at least some level of validation that, if you are getting traction, if you are building your business, even if you aren't a technical founder, even if you don't have a CTO, even if you haven't grown as fast as everyone else, I really resonated with, I think it was David that said, if there's a problem, you may need to pivot. You may need to figure out what's the best business model, but if the problem is there and it's repeated over and over and over again, then there is a business opportunity. You just got to find the one that people are willing to pay for. So, there's that piece. And then if I also think, if I double click even more on the VC side, we also focus on non-dilutive capital. How can we think about, access to investment outside of the VC community? Like, I love the panel. I'm all here for everybody. But I'd like to keep as much of my equity for as long as possible. I am a huge fan of Tope at Calendly. He was able to really rock out and get an amazing valuation of which he owns, a lion's share of that because he didn't take venture until much later stage in his fundraising process, because he let the product speak for itself and he refined it, he tweaked it, and made it something that so many people use. And you're like, a Black man runs Calendly? I didn't even know this. So, I think that I want to continue to also keep the conversation open to as many alternative forms of investment as possible, making sure your credit is great. Go David, getting access to loans, getting access to business lines of credit can also allow you the working capital you need to build your business and in turn, again, keep that equity for as long as possible. So a couple of thoughts, but I think there's so many opportunities for us to think about, ways for all of us to make money. I'm a humongous fan of institutional or of generational wealth and being independently wealthy, I think is also really important.
Oh man, we love it. We love it. Cam, we're passing it over to you.
Yeah, so I have nothing else to say. No, but this panel is absolutely great. But I think I come at it in a different way, being a nonprofit and being a founder of a nonprofit. So for me, I build not Black men in tech out of sheer need for myself, being selfish about it, right? Black men have been so long been pictured in so many different ways, right, from a defamation model. So I'm figured that I started to think about, well, how can I tell the counter story, right? If you think about critical race theory, this whole notion of counter story, how can I tell the counter story? And I was like, well, I can tell the story by creating a community. Now, we know there are all different types of Black people. There's all different types of Black men. There's no monolithic experience. So I wanted to show how Black men can meet at the intersection of technology and go to the next level, and you all can look different, right? Our last conference, well, our first conference, so we did this first conference in June, we had strategically placed 2 Chainz as an investor, and we also had Tristan Walker as a founder. And that was intentional because I wanted to show the the diaspora or the journey of a Black man. Two different lives, two different ways, but they all can be in the tech space. So tech was our hub. And I just wanted to share that story, share it from a philanthropic effort where Black men go into the community and do the work, and then partner with people like Regina and everyone else to get things done in our community, right? We take care of our own community. So that was a thought process. It was a need, but it was a need based on the fact of I needed a space to share with other brothers that look like me, our story, our way, right? How, like in our group chats and our group meets and stuff, we talk about negotiation. We talk about the next level of jobs. We talk about creating access and education for ourselves. And because of this community and because of this hive, we are now all better people that can support on the rough days and celebrate on the best days, right? When someone gives a promotion or someone have it out, you know, we give the counter production of the story. We help coach each other, that sort of thing. And that's what I wanted to build. Completely nonprofit because we want to give as much as we get and we want to give it back to the community. Because to whom much is given, much is required. And for us, it's required of us to take care of the people that's coming up after us. So that's the thought process for me. And that's literally why I started Black Men in Tech. It was just for the shared need of having a space for Black men to create and communicate with each other. And everyone looked different, but we all are in the tech space.
Oh man, I'm getting goosebumps. I don't know about you all, but this is why we did this. And one thing that I'm seeing across everyone is this notion of support and community. And so the next question that we have is, who is your support system? And do you feel like you get support from the Black community?
And what support do you need also from the non-Black community as well? So we're going to start off with David.
All right. I think having a support system is huge for all avenues of the journey. So I think I would answer that question to like my support system has grown over time. So my support system initially still has the same people that were in it from the earlier days, but has also grown. And the reason why I make that distinction is because in the earliest stages of having a venture or building something from the ground up is not everyone will see that vision. Even those that might be close to you, maybe friends and maybe family. It's not the worst thing that they're not supporting. It's very natural. That vision is not meant for everyone. Not everyone can see the vision and they have their own life going on. There's a lot of busy things going on in everyone's life. So in the earlier stages, my support system were trusted mentors in entrepreneurship that I could look towards for guidance, for advice, as well as friends that, I don't know if I'm just making up something, let's say you were into like crocheting or something. People are like, why are you doing that? Like, that's weird or something. But you have some people like, oh, cool, that's cool. Get into your art, reach that vision. Like the people that are positive, because initially what you need are people that, not that they're yes men, but that support what you're doing. So those are just close friends, people with positive attitudes, etc. As that grew though, my support system became a lot more robust, again, to include different investors, mentors, advisors, community members. And the reason why I make that distinction is because when going into fundraising, as taxing as building a startup is and as stressful as that is, and you absolutely need a support system just for that alone, is when fundraising, that is such a condensed time frame where you're beat up from left to right. And like just from, I don't know what stage of when the audience is per se, but hearing a no, arguably every single call, or like being on the phone with someone for days, weeks, or months on end to hear a no, when you've given your sharpest pitch, whatever the case is, as unpersonal as you want to make it, and that's the difference, is it's not personal, is that does hurt and it does take a toll. And just being a Black founders, I think we're accustomed to being resilient, to going against the odds, but it does take a toll, and it does take a toll against your mental health. So as strong as you are, having that support system is critical. And that support system, I'd say, again, towards those later stages, et cetera, might just be someone for you to talk to, let some steam off, help gain some direction or be grounded. And again, this could be anyone. It could be a neighbor, it could be another founder. And I would say a more robust support system as you grow. So at the beginning, it could be just one friend. But as you grow, I think having that variety is important because there are different people that you may go to for support for different things. Maybe when again, you're fundraising, maybe you go to another Black founder that has fundraised or is fundraising. So maybe being able to relate is one way to kind of get through and say, okay, it's not just me. It's, I can kind of, rest some anxiety there. Maybe one person in your support system is great for one thing, but something might be more personal. You don't want to open up to someone unless they are a founder, unless they're like 2 times removed, so it's not that close to you, whatever the case is. But I would just be very aware to build honest, trusting relationships, and you'll be really surprised at who you can reach out to that'll be there for you when you need it. And you do need it, and you need it constantly. So I'd say right now my support system is fairly robust, but there's a handful of very close people that I may reach out to on, a daily basis, a weekly basis, or a monthly basis, depending on what, where I'm struggling or, where I stand. But that's, I would say at a high level, a couple of nods I would have at the importance of a support system and who some of those members may be. One nod here, which I may mention in a bit as well. I did hear Regina mention earlier that early stage funding, particularly for underserved communities, is very scarce. And with accelerators, so I had gone through a number of accelerator programs, which are early stage boot camps, or usually they have funding intertwined with them. There's a few notable ones. I had been in Techstars, which again, depending on what the questions are, I may jump up a little bit deeper to flesh that out. But that's a huge community of other founders, investors, et cetera, that understand your struggle. And there's a big value around it all being family. So I wouldn't doubt that I could reach out to a complete stranger in that Techstars community and they would welcome me in as family, provide that advice. But then if you do have, if you are looking to build that out, start with someone close to you that you do trust, lean on them. And then as you grow out, I would definitely recommend the community of Accelerator is a very large community that relates with the experiences that you're going through.
And Regina, we would all love to know, who is your support system in terms of from the Black community, and what do you need from the non-Black community as well?
What we need from what I would like from the non-Black community is money. I think that if we look at where the bulk of the money is, it would not be with us. So, I think oftentimes, depending on your stage, right? I think about, so within the Black Women Talk Tech community, there are, entrepreneurs who are just now starting. They are just now forming their ideas. Some women find their co-founder at our conferences. And then you also have entrepreneurs that are already up and running. They're already, they've gained some traction. They're either getting ready for a seed raise, maybe even getting ready for a Series A. And when we think about those businesses that have such potential, it's at that time they need less mentorship and they need less talking and more action, right? So how are we finding ways to get them the growth, right? How are we commercializing? How are we providing introductions to clients, introductions to vendors, introductions to business opportunities, business development opportunities that are allowing them to grow? Those are the types of resources that I think are super important. And so when I say money, I don't necessarily mean literally the cash, but it's giving you the introduction to your next 6-figure client, giving you, setting you up to and walking you into a company that's going to use your product for the next 3 to 5 years. That's the social capital, right? That's the kind of capital that oftentimes our networks don't allow for, that oftentimes are in networks of people that don't look like us. So, and not to say, again, I'll never, ever discount our community and the network that we have. We should always start there. And if I were to think about what I would want from our community, it's just to be an open book and to, when someone asks you for help, to answer, right? But then if I were to think about, what is going to help us move the needle in the next step, that's where I would focus. I think, there's not a pipeline issue. Okay, there is not a dearth of founders that are not competent, capable, degreed, everything, right? And success is when preparation meets opportunity. These people are prepared. That's not the issue. The issue is the opportunity. So how many times, how many ways, how many avenues, how many pathways can we create opportunity that's real, tangible, and that leads to money?
Thank you so much, Virginia. Chandler, any thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. So definitely want to echo Regina's sentiment, on what our peers, can provide, just in terms of capital and opportunity. I think there is this adage, that, a lot of underrepresented founders are over mentored and under, capitalized. And so it's like, yeah, I definitely agree with that sentiment. And I'll say, in terms of like my personal support system, I mean, obviously, like the family piece is super important, but I'll say, like in the first venture that I try to build, sometimes there can be a little bit of disconnect in what you're doing and like your family's understanding, of what you're doing. And so that was an extremely, kind of difficult period to not have like that piece to lean on. But I'll say like those people that are just like your friends in your life who maybe aren't in the space and have nothing to do with this, I found almost like the most kind of like solace in those relationships because I felt like I could kind of turn, all the way off. And I think now, really what I try to do is I try to spend time with folks who are considerably further along in their journey than me, and folks who I'm a little bit further along in my journey than them. And I think it gives me kind of the balance that I need, right? I see, those who, are mentors, and, I will agree with David, right? Like you reach out to folks, you will be so surprised, who will respond to you. I've got a mentor now, who had 9-figure exit. He texted me more than my friends from college, and it was, just off of cold reach out. But with that being said, right, like the battle scars that he has, but also the insights that he has that allowed him to do that, are like invaluable and things that like I wouldn't be able to get unless I was talking to someone who had been through the fire. But then on the other end, I definitely like try to work to, like mentor college students and, early entrepreneurs who are just a little bit earlier on in their journey. And I think while there may not necessarily be like that like tactical learning piece in that, I think it provides like incredible context, right? Like those like really difficult problems that you're losing sleep over and you can't, like they feel like they're the end of the world. For someone else, it's like they're like praying to be in a position to have those problems. And I think, being able to look both forward and backward, kind of gives you that context of like, look, I'm where I need to be and I know what I need to do to continue to move forward, but like I also can't be, too down on myself when things, aren't moving, necessarily as fast as they need to. So
Thank you for all that great insight, Chandler. Eric, I want to hear all your abundance of knowledge.
Right, Virginia. So, Regina, Chandler, they've mentioned a couple of different points that I'd like to hit on. And especially around access to capital, especially around access to early capital. The world that many diverse founders operate in is so different from the day-to-day funding and financing world of the majority. So I've seen, a couple of stories, and one on each end. I have to keep them generic so that I don't embarrass anybody when I tell the story. But I did a deal a few years ago, and my buddy did a friends and family round, and one of the guys kicked in 75,000, and we built this up to handful of millions, and that got us the seed capital to start this deal. A couple of years later, private equity came in, took everybody out, so there was time to pay people back and give them a return. Went to this one Fred who had kicked in the 75,000, gave him his check plus his return, and he looked at it and he was like, "Well, what's this?" And we were like, "Dude, that's the money that you put in." And he's like, I don't remember putting money in. He forgotten that he put 75,000 in 24 months before. Okay, so we convinced him that it was his money plus a return. He took it, and everything's cool. On the other end of the scale, I represented the portfolio company in a private equity firm. And this private equity firm had maybe about 10 companies in it. I represented the premier portfolio company. I became good friends with the managing partner and founder of the private equity firm. And we took that company over a period of about 5 years to where it was acquired at many tens of millions of dollars. So I called up the owner, who we become friends. I was here in Colorado at the time, and I was congratulating him on the acquisition of his firm. And he said, Eric, I'm out handing checks to my partners, and these checks are big. They're in the millions. And he said, I told one of them, now look, I'm putting your check here on the side of your desk. Don't let it fall off at the end of the day into the trash can. Have somebody put it in the bank. And what he was saying was, he was very wealthy. And what he was saying was, it's so relative. There are people with so much money that a check in the millions may be something that they'll put in the bank at the end of the week, or maybe they'll just stash it in the pencil drawer, and maybe they'll find it when they move to a different office. So what I'm saying by that is, the world in which diverse entrepreneurs and innovators operate in is oftentimes so distinctly different in terms of capital access. So the idea is not to get down around this kind of anecdotal information. The idea is to say, let's strike while the iron is hot. Who do we need to get together with? I don't care who they look like. I mean, I have a good brother that was a couple of years behind me as a lawyer. I mentored him. He's been practicing for a couple of decades. He's now been general counsel in some of the largest inside counsel in some of the largest firms in the country. We had a mutual friend that's done really well, and another friend that was a black guy who was a doc and wound up being chief of radiology at a really large medical center. So we kind of supported each other in our early careers. But right now my network includes them and others. Includes them. I have one of my partners in my firm is a 2-star retired major general. He's white but could be black. He's somebody I can rely on. I talk to him about everything and vice versa. I have a very diverse network. We all work together. If your arms are big and you want to row in the same direction with me, jump in the boat, let's go. Because that's all I'm concerned about right now. Let's work together. And to be honest with you, there are some people whose hearts are so big and so deep, it is not even a question. We're all headed in the right direction. Because at the end of the day, I want the kinds of experiences that I've seen and that others have seen experienced by more people who are brown and black and gay and lesbian and so forth. We all should be having these silly stories about some friend who dropped in 75,000 and 24 months later forgot he'd even put the money in. And we all should be laughing about that. Not seriously, but we should have those kinds of stories. So, Virginia also, that's the way I look at it. And I think that really kind of informs why I have the capital formation hats that I wear, why I want to build the kind of ecosystem, why we invest in the kind of general partners. If I could have one more story. We, Venture Capital Authority, we launched our 4th fund in January. And we have our statewide we have a mandate by the legislature where 50% can be invested statewide, 25% in economically urban distress, 25% in rural. This was a statewide fund. 6 months in, our general partner at the new venture fund was giving us a roll through of the portfolio companies that they'd invested in. They invested in 6 companies in the first 6 months. And at the end of his discussion, this was just a statewide firm, he looked at the board virtually and said, oh yeah, by the way, 4 of the 6 companies are African-American and or female founded. And then kind of went on and said, we just thought they're clearly the best firms that we could find in the tech areas or the areas we wanted to support. Not all the firms are tech. And then he went on and concluded. And when he was off the call, I got back on with the rest of my board, and I was pretty emotional because in 8 years, that's the first time I had heard that happen with the capital we had put into the market. And this was somebody who isn't even a part of the diverse fund, which is the fund we're working on right now. So some people are just like-minded. They want to make a change. Let's get in it. Let's do it.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And Cam, tell us, who supports you?
Yeah, so a number of people. I like to have my circle so diverse that it's very different in the way we think and operate. Like I have people that's in many different parts of business, many different areas of life, because I think you can learn something from everyone. So I call it like reverse mentoring. I learn as much from them as they probably learn from me. And we together share things that's absolutely amazing, moving us to the next phase of our life in the future. Some of my like closest individuals that I trust with my thoughts are probably younger than me, right? And at different stage in life because they see it differently. I have individuals that is much older than me that give wise counsels as well, and also want to hear what's next and what I'm thinking about. Some of my visions are pretty wild. Like some of the things I think about. So I have to have a complete crew that'll be like, no, Cam, no, you can't do that. Like, and then tell me why, right? Don't tell me just no, tell me why. But we have healthy dialogue and discussions, and I trust that circle with my deepest thoughts. When I first thought about Black men in tech in November, I called one of my people in my circle who live in London, a Black man, and I told him I want to do it in June. And he looked at me. It's like 6 a.m. He looked at me and said, "Okay, that sounds good for like 2022." And I was like, "No, I want to do it this year." He was like, "Okay, we'll see." You know, and the next time we talk, I had it like lined up, and he was like, "Okay, so we're doing it." And when they say we doing it, meaning that they're gonna give up their time, their energy, right, for free to get this stuff done because they believe in what we're doing together. And that's the collective I want to be around. Even if we never gain a dollar together on a project, I want the people to pick up the phone and listen and let's chat. And that's what my circle looks like. Because we'll get money together, but when you don't have a dollar and you still trying to pitch a vision, who's gonna be there with you, right? And that's the circle that I run with. So yeah, my circle is very vast, very different. If you saw us all in the picture, you'd be like, there's no way difference, right? There's no way. But these are the people that I know I can count on and I trust with everything. So yeah.
Man, thank you so much. And so unfortunately, we only have about 3 minutes left. And so what we want to do is dive into specific questions for each of the individuals. And so the first person I want to go with is Chandler. So you are both a VC and a founder. How has that changed the way, how has that duality impacted your work? And do you feel like it's given you an edge of sorts?
I would say 1,000% in terms of giving an edge. And to be completely frank, I went into venture initially because I was like, I love entrepreneurship, but I don't know much about like high growth tech entrepreneurship. And so let me just like go behind the curtain, learn the terminology, learn what's being looked for, learn the strategies, and then I'll be in a much better position to be successful, as a builder. And I mean, mentioned earlier, some of the conversations, as we were doing some of our fund to funds investing, right? And these people, who were struggling to raise for their funds, right, were incredibly successful at the highest level, and so, for me, as I'm kind of looking down, my fundraising journey, it definitely prepared me, right? And again, one of those pieces that David said about not taking things personal, it's like, I'm so early in my journey that if, these folks have succeeded at the highest level and, are maybe struggling, then it's bigger than somebody not liking me. Like it's way bigger than that, but I'll say, I mean, small things, right? Raisha asked the question about like making money, before product was developed, right? And that was something where for me as an investor, I would get really excited about companies that had like a really minimal product, but were making money. And a lot of times they'd throw up a landing page and they'd use like Microsoft Excel or Airtable or Google Sheets or something like that as like a back end. And, they would collect the data and then actually like do the work that the technology was supposed to do manually themselves, close a few sales. And so for me, seeing that, of course, I'm going to go do that, before we even try to raise money and spend as little money as possible. And so that was something that made it easier for us to raise money because we could show revenue before having to bring on, a large, built out tech team to actually build out product. Another thing that like learned a lot about from that, was channel partnerships, for example. We did a deal into, a virtual veterinarians, company. And so instead of, reaching out to pet owners, instead of reaching out to vets, they were reaching out to private equity firms that were acquiring veterinarian centers. And so instead of signing up one at a time, they're signing up 40, 50 at a time, and so some of those things, I feel like no matter how much I read, no matter how many events I went to, it just would not have been the same experience without being behind, the curtain. And it's been super helpful. And then also just, kind of knowing, what terms are fair, as well, because that is one thing that I think, especially for your underrepresented founders, both from a racial, and a gender, perspective. You will quite often see folks with a similar level of traction as a counterpart and not get the same type of deal, and so, yeah, I mean, I think it's been incredibly helpful just throughout, all parts of the journey.
Man, that's phenomenal. I've built out a couple of Excel backends in my day, so I appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
Up next, we're gonna go with Regina. The question beckons itself, how do we get more Black women to sit at the table? Because you're on this panel, you're radiant, you're bringing in so much of this information. How do we get more of you?
Visit www.blackwomentalktech.com. No, there's tons of us, we are here. We're, I guess, hiding in plain sight. But I mean, I think that there's not a lack of women entrepreneurs. There's not a lack of women with, in artificial intelligence and machine learning and SaaS platforms and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. Like, there's just ask. I can absolutely count off 20 women, off the top of my head, 100 women off the top of my head. And that really is our mission, is to change the idea of what a founder looks like. When you think of a tech founder, who do you think of? Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Peter Thiel, Jack Dorsey, and what do all of these people have in common, right? So, but, we can talk about Jessica Matthews, we can talk about Dawn Dixon, we can talk about, Asosa Ighodaro, Lauren Washington, like there's so many Black, Jessica Robinson killing it in cybersecurity. So many are coming to my head, but like, I think that we need to do a better job, I guess, tooting our own horn sometimes. I think oftentimes, when you think about, we're just head down doing the work. We want to amplify these stories, not my own story. It's really about amplifying all stories, but amplifying the stories that really do make an impact in not only our community. All the women that I mentioned actually are working on products that are for everyone. So it's me personally, my beauty startup focused on women of color. But potentially it could be applied to, all women. It could be applied to men. It could be applied to so many things. So, I think that we're only getting started. We've only scratched the surface of what's to come. And that's what's really exciting. And, there's so much more, because technology is also always changing. And so we have to stay a step ahead in order to be able to capitalize on it. What are the things that, what are the startups that we're going to need 5 years from now? Like, I wish I was in supply chain right now, because, supply chain, clearly we have seen in this pandemic just how critical it is, but how it's always been antiquated, right? Even before the pandemic. So, there's lots of industries, there's lots of opportunities and consumer behaviors that we just need to kind of to look out for. And sometimes it's not the thing that you might be personally interested in, or it might not come from your personal background, but it's still a moneymaker. And if you're really good at solving problems, then it could still be a tech startup for you. So I think, the more we continue to kind of dig into that and explore, the more you'll see, even more, Black women entrepreneurs on panels, on stages, getting awards, getting funded, getting more venture capital funding, and ultimately getting more exits.
Thank you so much. My goodness. And what's fascinating is that we have these amazing discussions with all of you, right? But it's so important that we take this offline and actually do it out in the real world, right? And one person on this panel who's really doing that and building out that ecosystem is Cam. And so we wanted to ask you, what is the next step for Black men in tech?
Yeah, so for us, thank you for that question. I think that's an amazing question. And the question that I get a lot, sorry, recently. But for us, it's about just amplifying the voice, adding individuals to the conversation. You hear Black men in tech and you say, it's not for me, right? It's about branding to make sure that everyone has a seat at the quote unquote table and everyone is invested at some point, because you may not necessarily be a Black man, but at the same time, there's parallel stories. There's opportunities for you to be a quote unquote ally, right? You can use your time, talent, and treasures to benefit the Black man and benefit the diverse community as a whole. The second piece that we're working on now is, of course, working on conference for 2022, but the second piece is that we're really in the community and engaging. So book bag drives, helping Title I schools in South Florida get tech kits and carts and interaction and innovative boards. Like, that's what we're working on now. We really want to be a steward of our community. It's on us, and we feel like it's our responsibility to take care of those that need access and education. So we're in a community heavy. We have a few programs coming up towards the end of the year, like toy drives for the winter break, for students getting winter coats, for individuals not in South Florida, because it's not really that cold ever here. But we really want to be a staple in the community and just doing great stuff. I mean, that's the pure reason why we exist. Beyond the community for us and the link up for the guys that, being able to just connect and build relationship. It's also about the ability to take care of our community. So that's what we're working on.
Awesome. We're looking forward to seeing all those things manifest. And so we want to move over to David. David, you've raised capital from Harlem Capital. So you've raised capital from folks who are both investors of color as well as investors who aren't of color. And so we're really curious, as you're navigating these spaces, do you ever have to code switch?
Repeat that last part. You say code switch?
Yeah, as you navigate these spaces, do you ever have to code switch?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think being aware or socially aware is important. So it's funny how, again, say with Harlem Capital, who, again, they're great investors, very notable. But even with them, there was just this cultural, the inverse of a cultural barrier, just like a relatability with them, where for me and my company, I started with my co-founder and also best friend, Jared and Henri, who are the co-founders and managing partners of Harlem Capital. They both started out of Harvard and we're both best friends. So there was a lot of relatability on that side, cultural relatability. Maybe we talked about some rapper in one of our calls or something. That's something that you don't get in your typical VC call. So completely unique. In terms of code switching or adjusting, is I would say, even naturally, when speaking to a majority of investors, is I will speak as properly as, pronounce things as distinctly as I can, come off at, in every single pitch. Whether it's with Harlem Capital or someone relatable or not, is, you're always giving your 10 out of 10 best pitch. Sorry if there's an iPhone ring in the background, my bad for that, guys. But there would be times where I'll give my most polished pitch. And I think a few people earlier mentioned, I think at least I caught Regina mention it, but I did catch maybe Regina and Chandler mention it, but they're thinking that next founder, that next hit founder is going to be a Steve Jobs, a Bill Gates, whatever the case is. And that's a very specific profile, or persona. So when you're pitching, even with that best of the best pitch, when they're choosing between, one of three deals that they're going to make, even if all of them are equivalent, they're going to pick the one they're more comfortable with. And again, I don't try to take that personally, or again, they're being racially focused. In my own sense, fast forward, if there is an exit I can give back, is not only do I intentionally want to invest in more people, that are underserved, underrepresented, et cetera, maybe even naturally, I'm more comfortable with investing into those that, face similar struggles and we can relate around. So I would say across the board, I give my sharpest pitch. But in terms of code switching, there's a level of culture, of relatability, of language where I can, let my shoulders relax and be a bit more natural. And I think that also gives an air of confidence. Now, again, it might not connect with every, investor that doesn't connect or relate with you. And I wouldn't say it means be lax and talk about whatever you want. But I think there's this balance between being professional, but being you. And I think that confidence, that clarity really resonates. I think that's what connected with Harlem Capital, because when we did our funding round, so in total, we raised about 3.6 million. We had a fairly large seed round, and we did our seed round over COVID. We didn't even have the chance to meet the Harlem Capital folks in person over that time. But I think we're able to relate so well, even over Zoom, that it was a very clear connection, and that wouldn't have been, that wouldn't have existed, been possible with a number of other investors. At that same time, our lead investor for the round, so our seed round was 3 million in size. Our lead investor, Vestigo Ventures, led with $1 million check, and I think at least all the partners are all white. Now they do have an intention or are aware to, invest in minorities, keep it diverse, whatever the case is. So thankfully we had the opportunity to meet with them, have good presence, good relatability, they understood the solution, and that worked out really well. So I would say just overall, just being aware of the environment, if you can meet in person, because although we're able to, make things connect with Harlem Capital over Zoom, we did meet with the lead in person, had a strong connection with them. And maybe that middle ground is building that connection. So although we might relate over things in the background culture, and that might add just a little more to our relationship, is if you've known someone, day after day, week after week, you begin to build up that culture of relatability amongst yourselves. And with our lead investor, we had known for a while. So even with them, I can be a bit more, again, not informal, but myself. And I think that's really important, because at the end of the day, the company exists as an extension of you, and you're you, and you can't just put on a face or a front that's not you, because at the end of the day, whether you succeeded in raising $100 million, there'll be some board meeting or some time where things don't go right. Even bring this back a bit as well. You want to make sure that you have the right investors. I know this wasn't the question, but in our last round, our 3 major investors, one was Vestigo Ventures, which is focused on financial technology. So a bunch of background in terms of our industry experience and advice there. Harlem Capital was about, I'd say 2 things. One was PR and marketing, because they did a great job in terms of brand recognition. So that was one part, but the other one was just around inclusive investing and kind of bridging that gap in terms of impact, in terms of network and resources. And our third investor was a local investor in Colorado, Matchstick Ventures, which invests across the Rocky Mountains. So I don't even know what the Rocky Mountains means. My geography is really bad. So I know it at least includes Colorado. So again, for everyone here, again, if you guys do reach out to me, more than happy to introduce you to some of those folks or the investors in the area. But having a set of good investors really matters, because if you're able to just get capital, something's going to go wrong. That's just inevitable. And if you have those that believe in you for who you are, you'd rather accept less capital or capital from someone that truly knows and believes in you than someone who just wants the metrics, because inevitably you're not going to meet the metrics one quarter or another. And, when things hit the fan, if they're just in it for the money, what happens then? Do they, at an earlier stage, you're not going to change management. That probably wouldn't be the power dynamic, but wrapping this back to the beginning, be aware of the investors that you're in, because as much as they're investing capital into you, you're choosing the investors. I did see one question in the chat as well, which I'm just going to nod on. It looks like it might have even been answered. Someone had mentioned, I can't see it right now. Okay, someone had mentioned a question on, I mentioned that they had sold out of their product in the first 6 days in 2019. And in the past year, they made over $500,000 in revenue, which is amazing. We were not doing anywhere near those numbers. They had mentioned they were struggling gaining pre-seed funding, which to me is ridiculous, but that's the landscape that we're dealing with. Part of a short solution, or way to think about that I would say is, tailing off of me mentioning that you're choosing the investors as much as they're choosing you, is you want a strong profile of someone who would invest. So if you can hop on Crunchbase, which has a strong database of investors, it might be the paid version, but if you can segment that on maybe like a fund that focuses on investing in underrepresented founders, that goes in on the pre-seed stage, that has made investments this year, and Crunchbase lets you filter for all of this. Those would be the three that I would think of top of mind. Is that should put odds a lot more in your favor, because again, if you take any of those out, if they haven't made an investment past 5 years, maybe they're not going to make an investment now. If they don't invest or have never invested in an underrepresented founder, if that's part of their thesis, I think you're hedging odds in your favor. And if you outreach 1, 10, 100 of those, I can't promise that one of the 100 will, but it's going to put odds a lot more in your favor. So I think it's ridiculous that you haven't raised, not that you haven't raised, I think it's ridiculous that the marketplace has made it so it's a struggle to raise in your current circumstance, but I think you definitely can. And if you look specifically for those who are looking to invest in companies like yours, I think you'll find a fit.
Thank you so much. And so last but not least, we have Eric. When we first started, we mentioned that there's a spotlight currently on our community. There's a lot of interest, but we're curious to know, how long will this interest last?
So also a good question. I really can't say. You know, when you look at these kinds of initiatives where there's a lot of focus, there's clear opportunity, you never know how deep it is. So it may very well be that this won't burn as bright as it is now for as long as we'd like. It just needs to burn bright enough and long enough for us to put our stake in the ground. And if we do that, we'll be okay. And the truth of the matter is, it's connecting to people like you in Virginia, the other panelists that are my compatriots on this panel. It's broadening our network. It's connecting networks. It's looking for opportunities. It's understanding who the person is that tends to be more quiet and put their head down and get the work done, and someone who's a little more high profile, and whatever that looks like, so that we're all working together across our skill sets, our experiences, our lived experiences, our desires, what we bring to that. More than anything else is going to make a difference about what we do with the opportunities that we have in front of us. But the one thing that I'm absolutely convinced of, as I look in my own backyard here in Colorado, but look across the nation, is the deep sense of connectedness and desire to work together is as great as any time around this. All I know is now's the time.
Thank you so much, Eric. And for all our viewers on YouTube and on Zoom today, this is our last question. What is one resource that you often recommend to our founders? And I want to ask Cam first.
I say immediately know your market, know what you want to do, and also know it's going to take a lot of work. All right, when I was all passion and excitement and enthusiasm when I started Black Men in Tech, didn't know how much hard work it was going to be, how much late nights it's going to be, how much time energy it's going to take. I was like, I got a really dope idea, I got a vision, now I got to do the work, right? So so for me, it's fun, it's important work, you know, it's really work that you care about, but understand what you're getting into, making sure the rest of your life is lined up for what you're about to endure and take on. So that'll be my advice.
Beautiful. And we want to go to Chandler next. What is one resource that you would recommend for everyone watching today?
Man, I hate to say this one because I feel like it's so simple. But Google is really your best friend. Like in today's day and age, like I would say exposure is one thing, but once you have had exposure, there's not really an excuse, you know, for not being prepared when you step into a situation, because literally all of the information is out there. It's just, are you willing to put in the time, effort, and do the research? So I hate to be the one to say it, but Google for sure.
There you have it. I love it. Next, we have Regina, the same question.
So what's one resource? Say it one more time, make sure I understand.
Yeah, so for anyone watching today, let's say the founders, what is one resource that you would recommend to them?
One. Well, I would would say one resource, this is probably going to be a little circuitous, but is yourself. So, get started like that. I mean, that's kind of, it's larger. I guess it's a larger thought, but there's so many times where people have ideas and they're working on the idea and you have analysis paralysis and you've done all the research and you've done all the markets. Just get started. Like start something today. Pull all of your fear and your nervousness and your anxiety and your passion and your energy and just get started. You will be ahead of that next person that's just sitting here thinking and hoping and wondering and saying, oh man, I wish I would have started that idea. That actually was like a huge driver of mine. Was in the very beginning, I was like, you know what, I'll be damned if somebody else does this. So I need to do it first so that I can get it out there, and not be kicking myself because I didn't do it. So you are your best advocate. You are your best driver in terms of making things happen. So just get started.
Awesome. And up next, we wanted to do David. How about you?
So for one resource that I would recommend, I had mentioned earlier, accelerators or Techstars. So in my experience, I ended up starting the company in and out of school or in and through school. And with that, I didn't have, many connections, at whatever stage to invest into the company. So I think it's a reality for a lot of underrepresented founders where even that pre-seed funding is scarce or non-existent. So where maybe someone can get, I don't even know, maybe even an extra $10,000 from family is, the reality is maybe no one in your really close network has an extra $5,000 or $10,000 to put in. Again, I know it was mentioned earlier, I believe by Eric, that relativity of someone putting in 75 or $1 million and, that not being such a significant amount to them. So, from college, not having all that network made is accelerators help me bridge the gaps in really developing my network. So I've gone through very quickly. Let me describe what an accelerator is. I think I described it earlier. But the typical structure is it's like an early stage boot camp designed to help you build out your network, your resources, help you reach new company goals. And it usually has funding as part of the package. There's a range of them. So I have gone through a number of accelerators in my experience. All of them have different structures. So some of them take no equity. Some of them do take equity. If you're struggling to get funding or just struggling, it's your first time as a founder, I would highly recommend it. I've been in a variety of them and think all of them in some form or another have been worth it. Be a hustler, get an inch, get an inch and drive it a mile, whatever the analogy is, or the metaphor, the saying is, but it's what you make it. And they give you a lot, they give you resources. They're there on your team to help you reach those goals. And then from some of those earlier accelerators, so I think the first one that we went in from school may have gave us like 20 or 40,000 as like an investment, which was good capital at that time to help us reach some meaningful goals, start looking to other fundraising. We still had to go through other accelerators in that earlier stage to keep things going, have that jet fuel to move us forward. But then really what changed the game for us was Techstars. For our pre-seed round, we always are fluctuating how much we're actually looking at raising, but ultimately we raised 600,000 and 300,000 of that were like 18 months of like bringing in like 10,000 maybe a month of just like endlessly like doing that and like not being able to pay bills one month after the other, whatever, well, not really bills, but like the team member, which is even worse than bills. Like you really, by everything, you want to pay your team more than yourself or whatever the case is. And that was really just a hard time, was a reality. But after we had gotten into Techstars, the way that I would best describe it is that the program managers, literally when they chose, say the cohort's like 10 people, when they choose those 10 companies, they literally invested into you. So I think they get a sliver of that amount, if I'm not mistaken. But then when they end up connecting with other investors in the network, these may be people that they've known for 5, 10, 20 years that really trust them. And they'll make that introduction from you as, hey, this is a company I invested in that I truly believe in, come and check them out. And that really helps fast forward some of that relatability, some of that trust. and really build out and flesh out that network. So amongst the, fleshing out the network and providing some capital, is I think an accelerator really helps you bridge the gap on that pre-seed stage, which is a struggle, because if your families can't invest and the investors aren't investing, you're kind of in that catch-22 of what do I do? And I think accelerators help solve that problem.
Thank you so much, David. And last, but of course not least, Eric.
So short form, also I'd say work your network. And along with that, don't be afraid to end a whole lot of conversations with, can you introduce me to, and can you help me with? Because you'll run into people that are more experienced than you are, or maybe more experienced than people in your network, but they would be glad to introduce you to somebody if you ask and if you follow up. Or they'll be glad to maybe carve out some time to help you. So work your network and be willing to ask people, can you introduce me to somebody that can help me? Could you help me with this? Because I understand that you have that kind of expertise in your background.
That's exactly what everybody needs to do, is always ask more. And if you don't ask, you don't know the answer. First
Absolutely.
of all, we just want to thank the panelists, all you guys, from the bottom of our heart. This was wonderful for your insight and for your expertise. We also want to thank everybody watching on YouTube, on our DSW website, on Zoom, and then this is also recorded, so also it'll be distributed as well to our community.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure. We also want to thank all of our sponsors. So the Commons on Champa, as well as Black Men in Tech. Huge shout out to our guy, Cam. We couldn't do this all without you. And this is kind of, where we have to end this conversation, but at the same time, we have to make sure it continues. We have these amazing panels, we have the resources. As Regina talked about, right, there are tons of Black women out there who are crushing it. As Eric talked about, as Chandler talked about, as all of you have talked about, there's so many people who are doing amazing things, and we just need to find each other. And so keep working hard, keep making things shake. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My email is going to be osa@capitalstudio.org. And then we have Virginia@capitalstudio.org. We'll put it in the chat as well. And yeah, keep on keeping on. And thank you again for joining us today. This was awesome.